Hi, welcome to NWOBHM Guitar Tuition. So classic album inspection today is Saxon's The Power and the Glory from 1983. I don't have a release date for it, it just said it was released in March, so I'm just putting out this video today, and it's 40 years old. So what's different about this album from the other Saxon albums? This was the first one with Nigel Glockler on drums. So the Saxon's albums before kind of marked the kind of classic period. You've got the first album, which is probably the first album in the genre of the new wave of British heavy metal. They got Wheels of Steel, Strong Arm and the Law, both in 1980, both classics. Denim and Leather, in my mind, sort of surmising the whole genre of NWOBHM and kind of marking the end of the first true wave of NWOBHM. You know, the proper NWOBHM bands really were kind of had our stuff out by the end of '81, in my opinion, anyway. And the whole Denim and Leather imagery was capturing the whole movement, really. Loads of great tracks on that. And then that was all captured on the Eagle Has Landed live album, a single album like Unleashed in the East, and you can get a more of a double one now with enough tracks, you know, it's been spread out. But that was the last album with Pete Gill. Basically, Pete Gill had a problem with his hand or something, so they got Nigel Glockler in as a temporary replacement while that sorted out, and then they just found like they were getting on better with Nigel Glockler. They thought his drumming was great, and then Pete Gill kind of came back but didn't. I don't know, I'm not sure what happened. He just kind of didn't come back to the band, and obviously got on well with Nigel Glockler because he's been the drummer ever since, apart from a few like issues with his back or neck. He did have a brain tumour as well, so he hasn't he hasn't always been in a band, but he spent quite, most of the time obviously he's in a band at the moment. So that's the first thing you notice this album is the drums are better. I always liked Pete Gill, really good. But Glockler's kind of underrated drummer. He's really tight. He's got a real powerful style. The other thing with this album is the first time they went to America to record. They went with American producer Jeff Glixman. They went to Axis Sound Studios. I think that might be his own studio. He engineered it. So Jeff Glixman, is principally known for doing Kansas. But he did Gary Moore's Fixing the Future album after this, and various other sort of hard rock and metal releases. Not totally top notch, not the first rate producer, but I think he does a really good job with this album. It made number 15 in the UK charts, so not as high as placing as Denim and Leather, which made 9. I think the reason for that was he didn't have this hit single off it. I think Power and the Glory made number 32, but this is the first time a Saxon album didn't sort of yield. That's actually supposed Strong Arm didn't, but there was other bands played on Never Surrender, on Power and the Glory, and it did pretty well. So it starts off with the title track. It's an early power metal song, really. It's got an up-tempo riff, pretty typical NWOBHM type of riff, and then the lyrics, the Power and the Glory, very much sort of proto-power metal lyrics. First thing you notice is the production. So I did sort of run through Saxon albums a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, and I kind of mentioned you can hear like it sounds like the guitars have got an isolation cabinet around them, and it's getting quite a lot of bottom end in there, or more than usual than Saxon would have. The drum sounds pretty good. It's kind of toppy, sort of slightly boxy snare, but it's got quite a lot of power. Saxon haven't had this sort of crunch before. I think the mastering, probably remastering on the CD helps as well. I imagine it was probably a bit tinnier on the original release, and then Biff's vocals are kind of sat in the kind of space in the slightly in the back of the mix with a bit of reverb on and so on, and I know it's got more polish to it, the sound, but it still sounds authentically, metal. So Power and the Glory is a good track. Then you got Red Line. Actually, it's 5 minutes 57. Power and the Glory. You wouldn't think it's that long. And then you got Red Line, which is 3 minutes and 38. This is kind of a closest thing Saxon did to a kind of boogie rocker, or sort of a bit of a ZZ Top. Actually reminds me of Montrose's I Don't Want It off the Montrose album. That's the groove and the riff, what the riff reminds me of. This is a good track. It's got a really cool chorus on it. Typical lyrics with Saxon about the highway. Obviously at the time of doing this album, they probably have been on the highway and they've been to the States before this, so now they can sing songs about that. Instead of sort of making them up. Then your next track is Warrior, 3 minutes 47. So it's not as strong as the first two, but it is a good track, kind of sort of 12/8 triplet metal type of meat. Really cool solo on this, where it's kind of got a repeating pattern, repeating phrase, and the chords change underneath. Again, more power metal lyrics, more power metal feel. I think so later on in the 90s, Saxon progressed into being a power metal band, really, and had more success in Europe and managed to keep going because of that. But I think this is the first album where they really touch on that imagery. And obviously the next album, Crusader, has a classic kind of power metal cover, even though the production and music doesn't really live up to that. And then the final track, I'm just going to look on my CD, it's Nightmare, 425. So this is the attempt at the single. They do a video for this. It's got one of my favourite Saxon lyrics. I was caught in a nightmare alone in the night. Biff manages to get the word night twice in. Brilliant. It's quite a nice poppy track. Again, it's not as strong as the first two, but it's a good commercial hard rock track in the style of Susie Hold On and those kind of tracks. And it's pretty effective. So, you know, a good solid side one. Side two opens with This Town Rocks. So this shows off Glockler's drumming. It's an up-tempo almost a boogie, speed metal. It's kind of got that Hot for Teacher beat, but before Hot for Teacher, Glockler's really nailing it. You know, he's double kick drums, his snare, he's like really on it. Yeah, it's a daft lyric, but I like this track. It opens side two really good. It's something different for the band, although they've done up-tempo tracks before, like Machine Gun, like Freeway Mad. They haven't done them with this kind of feel. And it's pretty effective. I quite like the way the sort of cut time feel on with sort of a cut time feel, I guess, on the verses, and like Dobby Dawson's just pumping, you know, quarter notes, and it's cool. And then the next track's only 3 minutes 43. This is Watching the Sky. This is kind of a poppy track. It's got I guess the riffs probably played on the D, G, and B. You know, it's one of those type of riffs with the two notes tried and then to the fourth, as it were. Again, I quite like this track, and it is a kind of classic Saxon thing where at the end it goes into a sort of halftime feel, a bit like See the Light Shining. What's the other track that does that? I can't remember. There's another Saxon track that kind of does that time sort of change. So again, it's not as good as This Town Rocks, but it's an effective track. The album benefits from it. And then it finishes with two corkers. You've got the Midas Touch again, 4/13, so tight arrangement. This is really good, you know, about the man having the Midas Touch. Really cool riffage. Nice sort of clean verses on this. Kind of going back to the first Saxon album in a way, like Frozen Rainbow, Judgment Day, stuff like that. And then it finishes with Eagle Has Landed. This is probably, I would guess, the longest track Saxon had done up to this point, 6 minutes 56. So it's kind of a spin on the Victim of Changes riff by Judas Priest. Production's really good on this. You can really hear the air on the drums. Guitars are crunchy. Nice outro solo. I'm not sure if it's Quinn or Oliver. Guitar solos are pretty solid throughout from both players. I think that their rhythm playing is especially tight on this. You can really feel that their use of downstrokes and the tightness. And I imagine like the guitar sounds inspired them, which I think is a better guitar sound for Saxon. So, yeah, this album's, like I said, it's only 36, 37. I was thinking about it just before, and I think this is probably one of the last albums where a band got away with 8 tracks. So throughout the 70s, we were used to bands doing 8-track albums, Sin After Sin, and Maine's debut in 1980 and so on. Obviously, Maiden and Metallica would do 8-track albums after this, but they were filling up 50 minutes of music. I don't think, you know, a record buyer would start to feel sort of hard done by if they only had 8 tracks and 36 minutes of music. And typically after this, a lot of albums tend to have 9 or 10 tracks and tended to be over 40 minutes, you know, before we went into the CD era. But it's a really good listen. I think it gets overlooked a bit because it comes after what's perceived as the classic era, but I think it continues the good run. I think it's a real shame. I said it in my previous Saxon thing a few years ago. It's a shame they didn't carry on with Jeff Glicksman. You know, if they were wanting to go a bit more commercial, you know, they could have get the heaviness of this, worked on building some bigger hooks of the Crusader album. But Kevin Beamish, it was just like a limp production, and then you got that great title track with its power metal sound, but then the rest of the album didn't kind of follow that form. But, you know, the thing is, I mean, this album sold 1.5 million copies worldwide, which is, I find quite, you know, I wouldn't have expected it to sold that much. I'm not sure what territories. It made number 155 in the US charts. I think they did a good tour support for this, so possibly they shifted, you know, getting close to 200,000 units or something like that. But I think it'd be difficult for Saxon with their type of metal to kind of make an album like a Scream for Vengeance or British Steel or the Maiden stuff where, you know, you can get those hooks in but still retain that integral sort of metal sound. But yeah, like I say, it's a shame about the Jeff Glickson thing. Recording the fall of 92, actually, at 82 this. Like I say, it came out in March. So, yeah, Power and the Glory, Saxon, definitely an 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10 for this one. Add this into that run of Saxon albums for me. So see you again soon. Cheers, thanks very much.